Hi, my name is Elena Martinez. I'm 29 years old, and I never thought I'd be the one to serve my own family a dish they'd never forget. You know that feeling when you think you know someone completely, only to discover they've been hiding their true colors all along? That's exactly what happened to me this past Thanksgiving. And let me tell you, the irony of what unfolded was so perfect, it almost felt like the universe was playing a cosmic joke. Before I dive into this wild story, I'm curious. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. I love connecting with people from all over the world who understand what it's like to deal with family drama. Now, here's the thing about family. We're supposed to stick together through thick and thin, right? We're supposed to have each other's backs when the world gets tough. That's what I believed for 29 years of my life. That's what I thought my relationship with my mother was built on.
Trust. Love.
Mutual respect. Boy, was I wrong. If you're someone who believes in fairness and justice, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Because this story is going to take you on a roller coaster of emotions, and honestly, only people who truly understand the importance of standing up for what's right will appreciate how this all played out. If you don't believe in fairness, well, you probably won't stick around for the ending anyway. So, let me paint you a picture. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, I'm sitting in my office, going through my usual routine when my phone buzzes. It's a text from my cousin Maria. Nothing unusual there. We text each other pretty regularly. But this message changed everything. Can't wait for Thanksgiving at your mom's place. It's going to be amazing having the whole family together again. I stared at that text for a solid minute, reading it over and over again because surely there had to be some kind of mistake. My mom's place? The whole family together? What was Maria talking about? See, here's the thing. My mother hadn't said a single word to me about hosting Thanksgiving. Not one word. We talked just 2 days before about my work, about the weather, about her neighbor's annoying dog. But Thanksgiving? Radio silence. So, I did what any reasonable person would do. I called her. Hey Mom, Maria just texted me about Thanksgiving at your place. I didn't know you were hosting this year. The pause on the other end of the line was so long, I actually checked to see if the call had dropped. When she finally spoke, her voice had this weird, almost guilty tone to it. Oh, Elena, honey, I meant to call you about that. It's just going to be a small gathering this year. Nothing fancy. Nothing fancy.
Right.
Because apparently when my mother says small gathering, she means everyone in our extended family, except me. Over the next few days, I started piecing things together, like some kind of detective investigating her own exile. My aunt posted a photo on Facebook of the beautiful centerpiece she'd made for Rose's Thanksgiving dinner. My uncle shared a picture of the wine he'd bought for the family feast. Even my teenage nephew posted a story about being excited for Grandma's turkey. Every single post felt like a knife twisting in my chest. My own family, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, were all gathered together celebrating, and I wasn't even invited to the table. But here's where the story gets interesting, and trust me, you're going to want to hear this part. You see, my mother didn't just decide to host Thanksgiving at her tiny apartment with her ancient oven that barely works. No, she decided to go all out this year. She wanted to impress everyone, wanted to show off, wanted to prove that she could throw the perfect family gathering. So what did she do? She made a reservation at the most exclusive restaurant in town. The kind of place that books up months in advance. The kind of place where a single dinner costs more than most people spend on groceries in a week. The kind of place that prides itself on intimate, personalized service and treating every guest like royalty. She booked a private dining room for 18 people on Thanksgiving Day. She ordered the premium holiday menu. She even arranged for custom floral arrangements that would photograph beautifully for all those social media posts she was planning. My mother, who had spent my entire life complaining about spending money on anything unnecessary, suddenly decided that nothing was too good for this particular family gathering. The gathering I wasn't invited to. But here's what my dear mother didn't know when she made that reservation, when she put down her credit card and smiled at the hostess, when she probably felt so proud of herself for planning such an elegant evening. She had no idea who she was really dealing with. Because you see, that exclusive restaurant she chose? That beautiful, prestigious establishment where she planned to celebrate Thanksgiving without me? I owned it. And tomorrow, she was going to find out in the most unforgettable way possible. To understand how we got to that moment, me standing behind the kitchen door of my own restaurant, watching my mother unknowingly celebrate without me, I need to take you back to where it all began. Back to a little girl who just wanted her mom to be proud of her. I was 7 years old the first time I realized I wasn't the daughter my mother wanted. It was a Tuesday evening, and I'd spent hours in the kitchen making what I thought was the most beautiful sandwich in the world. Peanut butter and jelly, but I'd cut it into a perfect triangle and arranged potato chips around it like little golden petals. I was so proud of my creation. My older brother Daniel had just walked through the door with a B+ on his math test, and Mom was practically glowing with pride. She hung it on the refrigerator with this huge smile, telling him how smart he was, how he was going to be so successful someday. Then she turned and saw my little sandwich masterpiece sitting on the counter. Elena, what is this mess?
Clean it up right now.
We don't play with food in this house. I remember standing there, my 7-year-old heart just cracking, watching her throw my beautiful creation in the trash without a second glance. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part came later that night. I was supposed to be asleep, but I'd gotten up to get some water, and I heard my mom on the phone with my Aunt Carmen. I pressed my ear against the hallway wall, the way kids do when they're trying to hear grown-up conversations. I don't know what I'm going to do with Elena, my mother said, and her voice had this tired, almost defeated tone. Daniel is so bright, so focused. He's going to make something of himself. But Elena, she just seems to lack direction. She's always in that kitchen making messes, playing around with food like it's some kind of game. I'm worried she's going to be a failure. A failure. At 7 years old, my own mother had already written me off as a failure. I slipped back to my room that night, but I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying those words over and over again. A failure. That's what she saw when she looked at me. And you know what the really heartbreaking part was? I started believing her. The pattern continued as we got older. Daniel would bring home good grades, and it was a celebration. He'd make the soccer team, and Mom would call everyone she knew to brag about her talented son. When he got accepted to college, she threw him a party and spent weeks telling everyone about how proud she was.
Me?
I brought home straight A's once in 5th grade, and her response was, "Well, finally. Maybe you're starting to apply yourself." When I won the school cooking contest in 8th grade, she said, "I hope this doesn't give you any silly ideas about your future." See, in my mother's world, there were only certain types of success that mattered. Daniel was going to be a lawyer, or a doctor, or some other respectable professional. He was going to wear suits and have a fancy office and make the family proud. I was going to figure it out eventually, hopefully before I embarrassed everyone. The favoritism wasn't always obvious. It wasn't like she openly said she loved Daniel more than me. It was subtler than that, and somehow that made it hurt even more. It was in the way she lit up when he walked into a room and barely looked up from her magazine when I came home from school. It was in the way she saved money for his college fund while telling me I needed to be realistic about my options. By the time I graduated high school, the message was crystal clear. Daniel was the success story, and I was the question mark. So when I told her I wanted to go to culinary school, you can probably guess how that conversation went. Culinary school? She actually laughed. Not a happy laugh, but this dismissive little chuckle that made my stomach turn. Elena, that's not a real career. That's what people do when they can't figure out what they actually want to do with their lives. But Mom, I'm good at cooking. I love it. I could become a chef. Maybe even own my own restaurant someday. The look she gave me was like I'd just told her I wanted to become a professional clown. Honey, be realistic. Food service is what people do when they don't have better options. You don't want to spend your life working in some greasy kitchen, serving other people. You're smarter than that. Except apparently, I wasn't smart enough for college. At least not according to her. Daniel got the college fund. I got a lecture about learning to support myself and contributing to the household until I figured out what I really wanted to do. So that's how I ended up at 19 years old, working double shifts at Mel's Diner on the outskirts of town. It wasn't glamorous. The floors were sticky, The coffee was terrible, and the regulars could be demanding. But you know what? I was good at it. Really good at it. I could remember every order without writing it down. I knew exactly how Mrs. Patterson liked her eggs and that Mr. Rodriguez always wanted extra hot sauce on his hash browns. I could flip pancakes and work the grill and handle a breakfast rush that would leave other servers crying in the walk-in cooler. More importantly, I was learning. Every day, I watched the cooks, picked up techniques, asked questions when we weren't busy. The head cook, Tommy, was this gruff 60-year-old guy who'd been working kitchens his whole life. He started teaching me little things, how to properly season a burger, how to get the perfect crisp on bacon, how to make scrambled eggs that were actually worth eating. "You've got good instincts, kid," Tommy told me one day after I'd suggested a small change to the way we prepared the morning potatoes. "You should think about doing something with that." But every time I went home and tried to share my excitement about what I was learning, my mother would just shake her head. "Elena, you're 20 years old. Don't you think it's time to start thinking about your real future?" Real future. As if everything I was passionate about, everything I was working toward, wasn't real. The family gatherings were the worst. Daniel would come home from law school with stories about his internships and his grades, and Mom would beam with pride. Then someone would ask what I was up to, and Mom's voice would get this apologetic tone. "Oh, Elena's still figuring things out. She's working at a little diner right now, just temporarily while she decides what she wants to do." Just temporarily. Like my dreams were some kind of phase I'd grow out of. But here's the thing about being constantly underestimated. It either breaks you, or it fuels you. And I was determined not to be broken. Every paycheck, I put aside what I could. $5 here, $10 there. It wasn't much on a diner salary, but it was something. I had this old coffee can hidden in my bedroom where I collected my tips and any extra money I could scrape together. I called it my someday fund because someday I was going to prove everyone wrong. The idea for the food truck came to me during a particularly brutal morning shift. We'd run out of the breakfast special, and I'd had to explain to 12 different customers that no, we couldn't make any more because we didn't have the ingredients. I was standing in the kitchen, looking at our limited supplies, when it hit me. What if I didn't have to depend on someone else's menu, someone else's ingredients, someone else's vision? What if I could create exactly what I wanted to serve, exactly the way I wanted to serve it? That night, I went home and started researching food trucks. I learned about permits and regulations, about the different types of trucks available, about what it would take to actually make it work. The more I learned, the more excited I got. I started planning my menu, sketching out ideas for the truck's design, calculating costs and potential profits. For the first time in my life, I had a concrete plan that was entirely my own. When I finally worked up the courage to tell my family about my food truck idea, the response was about what I expected. Daniel rolled his eyes. "A food truck? Seriously, Elena? You want to be one of those people standing on street corners selling tacos?" But it was my mother's reaction that really stung. She didn't say anything at first. She just sat there at the kitchen table, looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Finally, she sighed. "Elena, honey, I know you think this is a good idea, but have you really thought this through? Do you have any idea how many food trucks fail? How hard it is to make money in that business? You'd be competing with established restaurants and chains, and for what? So you can work 18-hour days and barely make ends meet." "But Mom, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about." Passion doesn't pay the bills, sweetheart. Passion doesn't give you health insurance or a retirement plan. I just don't want to see you waste years of your life chasing something that's probably not going to work out. That phrase, "probably not going to work out," echoed in my head for weeks. Not definitely won't work out, but probably not. Like, even my own mother couldn't completely dismiss the possibility of my success, but she sure wasn't going to bet on it either. The worst part was, her words planted seeds of doubt that I couldn't shake. What if she was right? What if I was just being naive? What if I spent all my savings on this food truck only to fail spectacularly and prove everyone right about me? But then I'd go to work at the diner, and I'd see the look on customers' faces when I brought them food I'd prepared with care, and I'd remember why I was doing this. It wasn't just about proving my family wrong. It was about doing something I genuinely loved, something that brought me joy even during the hardest days. So I kept saving. Dollar by dollar, shift by shift, dream by dream. It took me 3 years to save enough for a used food truck. 3 years of double shifts and ramen noodles for dinner, and wearing the same jeans until they literally fell apart. 3 years of my mother asking when I was going to get serious about my future and Daniel suggesting I consider more stable career options. The day I finally had enough money, I called the seller and arranged to see the truck. It was this beautiful red and white Airstream that had been converted for food service. It needed some work, but it had good bones and all the equipment I'd need to get started. Standing there in that empty parking lot, looking at what would become my first real business, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Pure, undiluted possibility. When I drove that truck home and parked it in front of our house, my mother came outside with her arms crossed. "Elena, please tell me you didn't actually buy this thing." "I did, Mom. This is it. This is the beginning of everything I've been working toward." She walked around the truck, shaking her head. "I just hope you know what you're doing. Because if this doesn't work out, you're going to be right back where you started, except older and with less money." That night, I lay in bed thinking about all the ways this could go wrong, all the challenges I'd face, all the obstacles that might stop me before I even got started. But for the first time in my life, the fear of failure was smaller than the excitement of possibility. Little did I know I was about to discover just how wrong my family was about everything. The first day I opened Elena's kitchen, that's what I painted on the side of my truck in bright, cheerful letters. I made exactly $43. It was a Tuesday, and I'd parked near the downtown business district during lunch hour. I served breakfast burritos, fresh fruit cups, and coffee that was actually worth drinking. $43 might not sound like much, but to me, it represented everything. It was proof that people would pay for my food, that my dream wasn't completely ridiculous, that maybe, just maybe, I was onto something. The second day was better. $67. A few customers from the day before came back and brought friends. By the end of the first week, I had regular customers who knew my schedule and looked forward to seeing my truck. Mrs. Chun from the accounting firm always ordered the veggie scramble with extra avocado. Jake, the construction worker, wanted 2 breakfast burritos and a large coffee, black. Sarah, the nurse who worked night shifts, would stop by on her way home for a fruit cup and one of my homemade muffins. These weren't just transactions. They were relationships. These people trusted me to fuel their days, to give them something delicious and satisfying, to brighten their mornings even when they were rushed or stressed or running late. And slowly, word started to spread. "Have you tried that new food truck downtown? The girl who runs it makes the best breakfast burritos I've ever had. There's this amazing coffee truck that parks near the hospital. You have to try her morning pastries." Elena's kitchen? Oh yeah, that's my favorite lunch spot. Everything she makes is fresh and delicious. Within 3 months, I was making enough money to cover my expenses and start saving again. Within 6 months, I had a waiting list of locations that wanted me to park outside their businesses. Within a year, I was considering hiring help because I couldn't keep up with demand on my own. But when I tried to share my success with my family, the responses were underwhelming. "That's nice, honey," my mother would say when I told her about a particularly good day. "Just don't get too comfortable. These things are usually just temporary." Daniel's response was even more dismissive. "I'm glad you're making some money, Elena, but it's still just a food truck. It's not like you're building a real business or anything." Not a real business. There it was again, that phrase that made my blood boil. As if serving hundreds of happy customers every week wasn't real. As if building something from nothing with my own hands and my own recipes wasn't real. The thing that hurt most was how they'd minimize my success in front of other people. At family gatherings, when relatives would ask about my food truck, my mother would say things like, "Oh, Elena's little cooking project is going well. She's having fun with it. Fun with it." Like I was playing house instead of running a legitimate business. But I kept going. Every dismissive comment, every backhanded compliment, every time they acted like my success was somehow less valid than Daniel's law degree. It all just made me more determined to prove them wrong. By year 2, I was ready to expand. The food truck had given me valuable experience and a loyal customer base, but I was ready for something bigger. I wanted a permanent location where I could serve more people, offer a wider menu, create the kind of dining experience I'd been dreaming about since I was that 7-year-old making sandwich art in the kitchen. Finding the right space took months. It had to be affordable, but it also had to be somewhere people would actually come. It had to have the right layout for a kitchen, but it also needed enough dining space to feel comfortable and welcoming. When I finally found the perfect spot, a small storefront in an up-and-coming neighborhood with big windows and exposed brick walls, I knew it was meant to be. The rent was reasonable, the space had character, and it was just the right size for what I had in mind. I signed the lease on a Thursday afternoon, and that night, I called my parents to share the news. I did it. I told my mother, barely able to contain my excitement. I found a space for my restaurant. Elena's Kitchen is going to have a real home. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Elena, are you sure about this? Running a food truck is one thing, but an actual restaurant? Do you have any idea how much work that's going to be? How much money you'll need? What happens if it doesn't work out? Always with the what if it doesn't work out. Never congratulations or I'm proud of you, or even tell me more about your plans. Just doubt and worry, and the assumption that I was probably making a mistake. Mom, I've been planning this for months. I have a solid business plan, I have savings, and I have customers who are already excited about a permanent location. This is happening. Well, she said with a sigh, I just hope you know what you're getting yourself into. The next few months were a blur of contractors and permits, menu planning and equipment installation. I worked 18-hour days getting everything ready, painting walls and training staff and perfecting recipes. It was exhausting and stressful and absolutely terrifying. But it was also the most exciting time of my life. The night before my grand opening, I stood in my empty restaurant, looking at everything I'd built. The warm lighting, the carefully chosen tables and chairs, the open kitchen where customers could watch me cook, the chalkboard menu featuring all the dishes I'd been perfecting for years. This was it. This was my dream, made real through sheer determination and more hard work than I'd ever imagined possible. Opening day was chaos, but good chaos. We had a line out the door from the moment we opened. Food bloggers showed up, neighborhood regulars came to check out the new space, and curious strangers wandered in because of all the activity. By the end of that first day, I was exhausted, covered in flour, and completely exhilarated. We'd served over 200 people, received compliments on every dish, and booked reservations for the next week. I called my mother to share the good news. That's wonderful, sweetheart, she said, and for a moment, I thought maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time, she'd recognize what I'd accomplished. Then she continued, just remember, the first day is always busy because of curiosity. The real test will be whether people keep coming back. And there it was. Even in my moment of triumph, she managed to plant seeds of doubt. But you know what? People did keep coming back. They brought their friends, their families, their coworkers. Food bloggers wrote glowing reviews. The local newspaper featured us in their weekend dining section. Within 3 months, we were booked solid on weekends and busy every night of the week. I hired more staff. I expanded the menu. I started hosting special events and wine dinners. Elena's Kitchen became the kind of place people celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, where business deals were made over lunch and first dates happened over dinner. I was living my dream, exceeding every goal I'd set for myself. And yet somehow, my family still couldn't bring themselves to acknowledge what I'd accomplished. At my cousin's wedding, when people asked about my restaurant, my mother introduced me as Elena, who has a little cafe downtown. A little cafe. Not the thriving restaurant that employed 12 people and had a 2-week waiting list for weekend reservations. Daniel's response was even more frustrating. When his law school friends came to eat at Elena's Kitchen, he'd make comments like, yeah, my sister decided to go the non-traditional route, or she's always been creative, so this works for her. As if being creative was some kind of consolation prize. As if building a successful business from scratch was somehow less impressive because it involved food instead of legal briefs. The breaking point came during a family dinner at my aunt's house. Daniel had just gotten a promotion at his firm, and everyone was making toasts and talking about how proud they were of his success. When someone asked about my restaurant, Daniel actually said, "Elena's doing well with her little cooking thing. It's cute how she's turned her hobby into a small business." Hobby. Small business. After 3 years of 16-hour days, after building something from absolutely nothing, after creating jobs and serving thousands of happy customers, my own brother still saw what I did as a hobby. That's when I realized something important. It didn't matter how successful I became. It didn't matter how many awards my restaurant won or how many people told me I was talented. In my family's eyes, I would always be the one who chose the easy path, who wasn't smart enough or ambitious enough to pursue a real career. And honestly, that realization was both heartbreaking and liberating. Heartbreaking because every child wants their family's approval, wants to make their parents proud. But liberating because I finally stopped waiting for their validation and started focusing on what I'd actually accomplished. By year 4, Elena's Kitchen had become one of the most popular restaurants in the city. We'd won multiple awards, been featured in national food magazines, and had a waiting list that stretched weeks into the future. I'd expanded to a larger space, hired a sommelier, and started offering cooking classes on Sunday afternoons. I was successful by any reasonable measure. I was financially stable, professionally respected, and personally fulfilled. I was living proof that passion could pay the bills, that following your dreams wasn't just naive optimism. But when I looked around that beautiful restaurant I'd built from nothing, surrounded by happy customers and hardworking staff, there was still this small, quiet voice in the back of my mind asking the same question I'd been asking since I was 7 years old. Will this finally be enough to make them proud of me? And that's what made what happened next so perfectly, devastatingly ironic. Because my mother, who had spent my entire adult life dismissing my success, who had never once acknowledged what I'd accomplished, was about to walk into my restaurant as a customer. She was about to experience firsthand the world I'd created, the dream I'd built despite every discouraging word she'd ever said. She just didn't know it yet. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I was in my restaurant's kitchen, prepping for the lunch service, when my phone started buzzing. Mom's name flashed across the screen, and honestly, I almost didn't answer. We'd been going through one of our usual phases where conversations felt strained and forced. But something made me wipe my hands on my apron and pick up. "Elena, honey." Her voice was brighter than I'd heard it in months, practically bubbling with excitement. "I'm so glad I caught you. I have the most wonderful news about Thanksgiving." My heart did this little skip. For just a moment, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe this was the year she'd finally ask to see my restaurant, or invite me to host the family dinner, or at least acknowledge that I might have something valuable to contribute to the holiday meal. "Oh yeah? What's going on?" I tried to keep my voice casual, but I could feel hope creeping in despite myself. "Well, you know how we usually just do something small and simple? This year, I've decided to do something really special. I've made reservations at this absolutely gorgeous restaurant downtown. It's supposed to be one of the best places in the city, very exclusive, very elegant." My stomach started to flutter with anticipation. Was she about to invite me? Was this finally going to be the Thanksgiving where I felt like part of the family? "That sounds amazing, Mom." "What restaurant?" "It's called Elena's Kitchen. Have you heard of it?" Apparently, it's impossible to get reservations, but I managed to book their private dining room for 18 people. Can you believe it? 18 people. We're going to have the whole family there, your Aunt Carmen and Uncle Miguel, your cousins Maria and Roberto with their kids, Daniel and his girlfriend Sarah. Even Great Aunt Rosa is flying in from Phoenix. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Elena's Kitchen. She'd booked my restaurant. My restaurant. For 18 people. The whole family. That's great, Mom." My voice sounded strange in my own ears, like it was coming from very far away. "So, what time is the reservation?" "4 o'clock on Thanksgiving Day. I know it's early for dinner, but they said it's the only time they had available for a party our size." "I'm so excited, Elena. This is going to be the most memorable Thanksgiving our family has ever had." I was gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles had gone white. And everyone's invited? Oh yes, everyone. Well, everyone who matters. You know how it is, I wanted to keep it to just family this year. Really family, if you know what I mean. Just family. Really family. The words hit me like physical blows. What do you mean by really family, Mom? There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her tone had shifted slightly. Still cheerful, but with an edge of discomfort, like she knew exactly what she was saying, but was hoping I wouldn't call her on it. Oh, you know, sweetheart. Sometimes these big family gatherings get so complicated when you invite everyone. This year, I just wanted it to be the core family. The people who are really established, really settled in their lives. No offense, honey, but with your restaurant and everything, you're just so busy. I didn't want you to feel obligated to take time away from your work. My work. The restaurant she'd just made reservations at without even realizing it was mine. Mom, are you saying I'm not invited to Thanksgiving? Another pause, longer this time. When she finally answered, her voice was artificially bright, the way people talk when they're trying to convince themselves that what they're saying is reasonable. Elena, don't be dramatic. It's not that you're not invited exactly. It's just that this particular dinner is for people who are in a more traditional place in their lives. Daniel with his law career, your cousins with their established families. You understand? No, I didn't understand. I didn't understand at all. Mom, I've been successfully running a restaurant for 4 years. I have 12 employees. I was featured in Food and Wine magazine last month. How is that not established? Honey, please don't take this the wrong way. I know you're doing well with your little cafe, but it's not the same as having a real career like Daniel. And you're still single, still figuring things out. This dinner is for family members who are really settled, really successful. Maybe next year, when you're more. She trailed off, but I knew how that sentence ended. When I was more what? More acceptable? More traditional? More like Daniel? I felt tears starting to burn behind my eyes, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of hearing me cry. I have to go, Mom. The lunch rush is starting. Of course, sweetheart.
You understand, right?
I knew you'd understand. You're always so reasonable about these things. Reasonable. That was her code word for pushover. For the daughter who never fought back, never demanded better treatment, never made waves.
Yeah, Mom.
I understand perfectly. I hung up the phone and stood there in my kitchen, my successful, award-winning, impossible-to-get reservations kitchen, and felt like that 7-year-old girl again, watching her sandwich art get thrown in the trash. The lunch service that day was a blur. I went through the motions of cooking and expediting orders, but my mind was replaying that conversation over and over again. Every word, every pause, every casual dismissal of everything I'd worked for. The worst part wasn't even the exclusion itself. It was the way she delivered it, like it was so obvious that of course I wouldn't be invited. Like my absence was so expected that she didn't even need to pretend to feel bad about it. That evening, after we'd closed and the staff had gone home, I sat alone at the bar in my restaurant, nursing a glass of wine and trying to process what had happened. My phone kept buzzing with notifications, but I ignored it. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone. Wasn't ready to explain why I felt so completely devastated. But eventually curiosity got the better of me. I picked up my phone to find a string of text messages that made my heart sink even further. The first was from my cousin Maria. OMG, can't wait for Thanksgiving. Your mom really went all out this year. Elena's kitchen is supposed to be amazing. Then Roberto. Dude, 18 people at that fancy place? Aunt Rosa knows how to do it right. This is going to be epic. Then Daniel. Mom told me about Thanksgiving. Pretty cool that she managed to get reservations at that place you're always posting about on social media. Too bad you'll be working that day. Too bad I'll be working that day. As if my absence was just an unfortunate scheduling conflict, not a deliberate exclusion. But it was the next message that really twisted the knife. It was a screenshot of a group chat I wasn't part of, sent to me by my cousin Luis with a message. Thought you might want to see this. The group chat was titled Martinez Family Thanksgiving 2023 and had 17 participants. 17. Everyone but me. I scrolled through the messages, each one feeling like a fresh wound. Carmen, I'm bringing my famous sweet potato casserole. I can't wait to see everyone. Miguel, Rosa, and I will handle the wine. This is going to be such a special night. Daniel, Sarah is so excited to meet everyone properly. Thanks for including her, Mom. Roberto, the kids are already asking if they can order dessert. This place looks incredible online. Maria, I've been telling all my friends about this dinner. They're so jealous we got reservations here. My mother, I'm just so happy we can all be together for such a special meal. It means everything to me to have my real family around the table. My real family. There it was in black and white. Confirmation that I wasn't considered part of her real family. I put my phone down and picked up my wine glass with shaking hands. I'd built this restaurant from nothing. I'd worked 18-hour days, sacrificed relationships, poured my heart and soul into creating something beautiful and successful. And my own mother was going to bring her real family here to celebrate without me. The irony was so sharp it was almost funny. Almost. Over the next few days, the messages kept coming. Updates about what people were wearing, discussions about dietary restrictions, excitement about the wine pairings. Each notification felt like a tiny dagger, reminding me that my entire extended family was planning this elaborate celebration that I wasn't part of. The worst part was that some of them clearly felt awkward about my exclusion. My cousin Luis texted me privately, "This is really messed up, Elena. I don't know what your mom's thinking." My Aunt Carmen called to say, "Honey, I hope you know this isn't my choice. I asked Rosa to include you, but she said she'd already made the arrangements." Even Great Aunt Rosa, who is 92 and usually stayed out of family drama, sent me a card that said, "Mija, I don't understand why you won't be there, but I'm thinking of you." But you know what? None of them actually did anything about it. None of them said, "If Elena's not invited, then count me out too." None of them refused to participate in a celebration that deliberately excluded me. They felt bad about it, sure. They thought it was wrong, but not wrong enough to take a stand. And that hurt almost as much as my mother's original betrayal. Realizing that I was dispensable to all of them, that their discomfort with the situation wasn't strong enough to actually change anything. I started having imaginary conversations with my mother, practicing what I would say if I confronted her. I'd stand in front of my bathroom mirror at night, trying out different approaches. "Mom, I know what you did, and it's unforgivable. How could you exclude your own daughter from Thanksgiving? Do you have any idea how much you've hurt me?" But every time I picked up the phone to actually call her, I'd chicken out. Because part of me was terrified that she'd just double down, that she'd find new ways to justify her decision, or, worse, that she'd act like I was being unreasonable for being upset. The loneliness was crushing. Thanksgiving was still 2 weeks away, but I was already dreading it. The thought of spending the holiday alone while my entire family celebrated together at my own restaurant was almost unbearable. I considered closing the restaurant that day just to avoid the torture of knowing they were there. But that felt too much like running away, like letting them win. I thought about confronting them in person, showing up at the dinner, and making a scene. But that would only confirm everything my mother had always said about me, that I was dramatic, unstable, not the kind of person you wanted at a family gathering. For a few dark moments, I even considered just giving in, calling my mother, apologizing for being dramatic, begging her to include me. I'd done it before, swallowed my pride, accepted crumbs of affection, pretended that her bare minimum effort was enough. But I couldn't do it anymore. I was 30 years old. I was successful, I was respected in my field, and I deserved better than this. Still, the nights were the hardest. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the Thanksgivings from my childhood. How, even then, I'd felt like I was on the outside looking in. How I'd always assumed that someday, when I was older and more successful, things would be different. Well, I was older now. I was more successful. And things weren't different at all. If anything, they were worse. Because now there was no excuse, no, she's still figuring things out, or maybe when she's more established. I had established myself, and it still wasn't enough. The realization that it would never be enough, that nothing I accomplished would ever make me worthy of my mother's respect or inclusion, was devastating. But it was also, in a strange way, liberating.
Because it meant I could stop trying.
I could stop holding my breath, waiting for her approval. I could stop measuring my worth by her standards. But first, I had to get through this Thanksgiving. I had to figure out how to handle knowing that my family was going to be celebrating in my restaurant while I sat at home alone. That's when fate decided to step in. I was in my office the Friday before Thanksgiving, going over the holiday weekend schedule with my manager, when my computer chimed with an email notification. It was from our reservation system, confirming a large party booking. I almost didn't look at it. My staff handled most of the reservation confirmations, but something made me click on it. Maybe it was the size of the party, or the date, or just random curiosity. The email opened, and I stared at the screen in complete disbelief. Reservation confirmation. Martinez, Rosa. Party of 18. Thursday, November 23rd, 4 p.m. Private dining room. Thanksgiving premium menu. Estimated total, $2,847. Martinez, Rosa. My mother's name. I read it again, then a third time because surely this couldn't be real. Surely this couldn't be happening. My mother had made a reservation at Elena's kitchen for her family Thanksgiving dinner. My restaurant. The restaurant that bore my name, that I'd built from nothing, that she'd never once acknowledged or supported. She was going to bring her real family to celebrate at the place her fake daughter had created. At first, I felt nothing. Just this strange, detached numbness, like my brain couldn't quite process the cosmic joke that was unfolding. Then I started to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that bubbles up when something is so absurd, so perfectly ironic, that you can't quite believe it's real. My mother, who had dismissed my restaurant as a little cafe, who had never eaten here, never brought friends here, never even acknowledged its existence in conversations with family. She had made a reservation here for the most important family meal of the year. And she had no idea that the owner, the chef, the dreamer, the failure she'd excluded from her celebration was me. The laughter died away, replaced by something darker and more complicated. Because this wasn't just ironic. This was an opportunity. My mother wanted to bring her family to my restaurant to celebrate without me. She wanted to experience the world I'd created, the dream I'd built despite every discouraging word she'd ever said. Well, I was going to make sure it was a celebration none of them would ever forget. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing with possibilities. I could cancel the reservation, of course. Tell them we were fully booked, that there'd been a mistake. Send them somewhere else for their perfect family dinner. But that felt too easy, too much like running away. Or I could let them come, serve them the meal they'd ordered, and then reveal myself at the end. Watch their faces when they realized whose restaurant they'd been praising, whose food they'd been enjoying. But even that didn't feel like enough. Because this wasn't just about one dinner, one moment of revelation. This was about 30 years of being dismissed, excluded, made to feel like I wasn't good enough. This was about every time my mother had called my dreams unrealistic, every time she'd introduced me as the daughter who was still figuring things out, every time she'd made it clear that my success didn't count because it wasn't the kind of success she respected. I thought about that 7-year-old girl, watching her sandwich art get thrown in the trash. I thought about the teenager who'd been told that food service wasn't a real career. I thought about the 20-something who'd worked double shifts to save money for a food truck while her family made jokes about her serving tacos on street corners. I thought about every slight, every dismissal, every moment when I'd been made to feel small and unworthy. And then I started planning. Because my mother was wrong about so many things. She was wrong about my chances of success. She was wrong about the value of what I'd built. She was wrong about who belonged at the family table. But she was right about one thing. This was going to be the most memorable Thanksgiving our family had ever had. She just had no idea what kind of memories we were going to be making. I pulled up her reservation details one more time, memorizing every word. Rosa Martinez, party of 18, private dining room, 4 o'clock on Thanksgiving Day. My mother had spent my entire life making me feel like I didn't belong at her table. Now, she was coming to mine. She was walking straight into my domain, my territory, my kingdom. And she didn't even know it. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I called a staff meeting. My entire team gathered in the private dining room, the same room where my family would be sitting in less than 24 hours. I looked around at these people who had become more than employees over the years. Marcus, my head chef, who'd been with me since the early cafe days. Sarah, my sommelier, who could pair wine with anything. Jessica, my front-of-house manager, who knew every regular customer by name. These people had watched me build this place from nothing. They'd worked late nights with me, celebrated our successes, weathered the difficult months when we weren't sure we'd make it. They were, in many ways, more family to me than my actual family. I need to tell you all something. I began, and I could hear the slight tremor in my own voice. Tomorrow's private party in the Rosewood Room? The Martinez reservation for 18 people? That's my family. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Your family? Jessica asked, confusion clear in her voice. But Elena, why didn't you just tell us? We always take extra care of your personal guests. I took a deep breath. Because they don't know I own this place. In fact, they specifically excluded me from this dinner because they don't think my career is legitimate enough to warrant an invitation to their family Thanksgiving. Marcus set down his coffee cup a little too hard, the clink echoing in the quiet room. Are you serious right now? Dead serious. My mother made this reservation at what she calls some fancy restaurant downtown because she wanted to celebrate with her real family, people who are properly established and successful. She has no idea that the restaurant she chose belongs to the daughter she deemed unworthy of inclusion. The staff exchanged glances, and I could see a mixture of emotions playing across their faces. Confusion, anger on my behalf, and something else, anticipation. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice growing steadier as I laid out my plan. You're all going to treat me exactly as you would any other day. When I'm in that dining room, I'm the owner, I'm your boss, and you respect me as such. Don't hide it, don't downplay it. If someone asks who I am, you tell them I'm Elena Martinez, the owner and executive chef of Elena's Kitchen. Sarah raised her hand like we were in school. Elena, are you sure about this? I mean, I get that you're angry, but this is your family we're talking about. Sarah, these people have spent 30 years making me feel like I don't belong at their table. Tomorrow, they're going to learn what it feels like to sit at mine. The meeting went on for another hour as we discussed logistics. I wanted everything to be perfect, not just the food and service, which would be flawless as always, but the timing, the choreography of revelation. Marcus would prepare a special tasting menu that showcased my signature dishes, the ones that had won awards, the ones that food critics raved about, the ones my mother had never bothered to try. Sarah would select wines that would complement each course perfectly. Jessica would coordinate the front-of-house staff to ensure that every interaction reinforced my position as the owner. I don't want anything that could be seen as sabotage or poor service, I emphasized. This isn't about revenge through bad food or rude treatment. This is about showing them exactly who I am and what I've accomplished. Let my success speak for itself. As the meeting wrapped up, Marcus lingered behind. Elena, you know I've got your back no matter what, but are you prepared for how this might affect your relationship with your family long-term? I considered his question seriously. Marcus, my relationship with my family has been broken for a long time. I've just been too afraid to admit it. Tomorrow isn't about fixing that relationship. It's about finally standing up for myself. That night, I barely slept. I kept running through scenarios in my mind, imagining different ways the evening could unfold. What would my mother's face look like when she realized the truth? How would Daniel react? Would anyone apologize, or would they just make excuses and try to minimize what they'd done? By morning, my nerves were shot. I arrived at the restaurant early, even though I didn't need to be there for hours. I needed the familiar rhythm of prep work, the meditative process of checking inventory, and reviewing menus. The kitchen was already bustling with Thanksgiving prep. We were serving a full house in addition to my family's private party, and everything had to be perfect. I threw myself into the work, chopping vegetables and checking seasonings, letting the familiar routines calm my racing mind. Around noon, Jessica found me in the walk-in cooler, ostensibly checking on our turkey stock, but really just trying to breathe. "Hey boss, you okay in here?" I straightened up, trying to look composed. "Just making sure we have everything we need for tonight." She gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it. "Elena, your hands are shaking." I looked down and realized she was right. My hands were trembling like leaves. "I keep telling myself this is what I want," I admitted. "But part of me is terrified. What if this backfires? What if it just proves to them that I'm petty and unprofessional?" Jessica stepped closer, her expression serious. "Elena, I've worked in this industry for 15 years. I've seen plenty of owners, good and bad. You are one of the kindest, most professional people I've ever worked for. You've built something incredible here, and you've done it with integrity and grace. If your family can't see that, it's their loss, not yours." Her words helped, but as the afternoon wore on and 4 o'clock approached, my anxiety only grew. I changed clothes 3 times, settling finally on a simple black dress that was professional but elegant. I wanted to look like the successful restaurant owner I was, not like I was trying too hard to impress anyone. At 3:30, I positioned myself in the kitchen where I could see the front entrance through the pass. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone around me could hear it. And then they arrived. I watched through the kitchen window as my family poured through the front door in a chattering, laughing group. My mother was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something expensive looking in deep burgundy that probably cost more than most people spent on a month of groceries. She was clearly trying to look sophisticated, worthy of dining at such an exclusive establishment. Daniel was there with his girlfriend Sarah, both of them looking polished and professional. My cousins Maria and Roberto had brought their kids, who were wide-eyed at the elegant surroundings. My Aunt Carmen was pointing at the artwork on the walls, clearly impressed. Even Great Aunt Rosa, who was usually frail and quiet, seemed energized by the occasion. They looked happy, excited, like they were embarking on a wonderful adventure together. And not one of them had given a single thought to the daughter and niece and cousin who was missing from their group. Jessica approached the party with her warmest professional smile. I couldn't hear what she was saying from the kitchen, but I could see my mother straightening up, putting on her most imperious expression. She was clearly trying to establish herself as the important person in the group, the one who had made this magical evening possible. They were led to the private dining room, and I gave them a few minutes to settle in before I made my move. I needed them to be comfortable, to start feeling proprietorial about their special celebration. When I finally walked into the dining room, my mother was holding court at the head of the table, regaling everyone with the story of how she'd managed to secure reservations at such an exclusive restaurant. "The waiting list is supposed to be months long," she was saying, "but I have my ways." I told them it was for a very special family celebration, and somehow they found space for us. That's when Marcus appeared at my shoulder. "Elena," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet room, "I wanted to personally make sure everything is perfect for your guests this evening. Should I go ahead and send out the amuse-bouche course?" The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a heartbeat. 18 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. I watched as confusion flickered across their faces, followed by dawning recognition, and then, in my mother's case, something that looked like horror. "Elena," my cousin Maria whispered, "what are you doing here?" I smiled, the same warm smile I gave every important guest. "I'm working, Maria, just like any other day." "Working?" Daniel's voice cracked slightly on the word. "But this is Elena's kitchen. You work at a diner." "Actually, Daniel, I own Elena's kitchen. I have for the past 4 years. This is my restaurant." You know that expression about someone looking like they'd seen a ghost? That's exactly how my mother looked in that moment. All the color drained from her face, and she gripped the edge of the table like she might fall over. "Your restaurant," she managed to whisper. "That's right, Mom. Elena's kitchen. Named after me. Built by me. Owned by me. I kept my voice pleasant and professional, but I made sure every word landed clearly. The same restaurant you told Aunt Carmen was impossible to get reservations at. The same place you said was so exclusive and elegant. The same establishment you chose for your very special family celebration. The whispers started then, rippling around the table like waves. Oh my God, Elena owns this place? This is Elena's restaurant? The one that was in Food and Wine. Wait, so she's been successful this whole time? Rosa, did you know about this? My mother tried to recover, tried to put on a smile and act like this was a delightful surprise instead of a mortifying revelation. Well, isn't that wonderful, she said, her voice pitched too high and too bright. Elena, honey, why didn't you tell us? We had no idea you owned such a beautiful restaurant. The lie came so easily to her, so smoothly, that for a moment I almost admired the skill of it. She was trying to rewrite history in real time, pretending that this was news to her, that she hadn't spent years dismissing my career as insignificant. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Actually, Mom, I've told you about the restaurant many times. You've just never been interested enough to listen. The whispers got louder. I could see my family members exchanging glances, starting to piece together what had really happened here. Elena, my Aunt Carmen said carefully, if this is your restaurant, why aren't you joining us for dinner? Before I could answer, my mother jumped in. Oh, well, Elena's working tonight. She couldn't possibly take time away from her responsibilities. Actually, I said, my voice still calm and pleasant, I wasn't invited to this dinner. This celebration is for real family only. People who are properly established and successful. I believe those were your exact words, Mom. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the shock and embarrassment on my family members' faces as they realized what had happened. How my mother had excluded me from a family dinner at my own restaurant. Daniel looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. Maria was staring at my mother with something approaching horror. Even the children seemed to sense that something terrible had just been revealed. But I wasn't finished yet. Now, if you'll excuse me, I said, I should let you enjoy your meal. Marcus will be serving the first course shortly. It's a butternut squash soup with truffle oil that won a James Beard recognition last year. The wine pairing is a 2019 Chardonnay from a vineyard in Sonoma that we have an exclusive relationship with. I turned to leave, but paused at the door. Oh, and Mom, thank you for choosing Elena's Kitchen for your special celebration. It really means the world to me that you think so highly of what I've built here. Walking back to the kitchen felt like floating. My legs were shaking, my heart was pounding, but I felt lighter than I had in years. I'd done it. I'd finally stood up to her, finally made her see what I'd accomplished. But as satisfying as that moment was, I realized it was just the beginning. Because now my mother was trapped in my restaurant, at my table, eating my food, being served by my staff. She'd come here to celebrate without me, and now she couldn't escape the reality of my success. For the next 2 hours, she was going to be surrounded by evidence of everything she'd been wrong about. Every bite of food would be a reminder of my talent. Every compliment from the staff would reinforce my accomplishments. Every elegant detail of the restaurant would prove that I'd built something remarkable. I returned to the kitchen and watched through the pass as the first course was served. I could see my family's faces as they tasted the soup, the surprise, the appreciation, the grudging acknowledgement that it was exceptional. My mother ate in silence, her earlier enthusiasm completely deflated. Every few minutes, one of my relatives would glance toward the kitchen, clearly thinking about me, clearly uncomfortable with the situation they now found themselves in. Marcus appeared at my elbow. How are you feeling, boss? Like I've been waiting 30 years for this moment, I replied. But even as I said it, I knew the evening was far from over. The revelation had been satisfying, but it wasn't enough. My mother had spent decades making me feel small, insignificant, unworthy. One moment of shock wasn't going to undo all of that damage. So, I decided to give her the full Elena's Kitchen experience. She wanted to see what real success looked like. I was going to show her exactly that. Over the next hour, I orchestrated a careful ballet of service and attention. Every time I walked through the dining room, which I made sure to do frequently, staff members approached me with questions and updates, naturally drawing attention to my role as owner. Elena, the food critic from the Times, would like to schedule another visit next month. Elena, we just got confirmation on that wine dinner with the Michelin-starred chef from New York. Elena, the catering inquiry for the mayor's reception. Should I send them the premium package pricing? Each interaction was genuine. These were real conversations I had with my staff every day. But the timing was carefully orchestrated to reinforce, again and again, the scope and success of what I'd built. I watched my mother's face grow more pinched with each exchange. She was trapped in a nightmare of her own making, forced to witness the very success she'd always denied existed. Meanwhile, my family members were starting to warm up to the situation. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by genuine appreciation for the meal and the setting. I could hear them talking in amazed whispers about the food, the service, the elegance of everything around them. This soup is incredible. Elena made this recipe. Look at this wine list. She must know every vineyard in California. The staff treats her like she's some kind of celebrity chef. God, we had no idea she was this successful. When I brought out the second course personally, a perfectly seared duck breast with cherry gastrique that had been featured in 3 different food magazines, my cousin Roberto actually stood up to shake my hand. Elena, I owe you an apology. We all do. I had no idea what you'd accomplished here. It's beautiful, Mija. Great, Aunt Rosa added, her voice shaky with emotion. Your restaurant, it's like a dream. But my mother sat silent through all of this, picking at her food, her celebration thoroughly ruined. That's when I realized something important. The shock and embarrassment weren't enough. The evidence of my success wasn't enough. Even the genuine remorse from other family members wasn't enough. Because at the end of the night, my mother would go home and find a way to minimize this, to explain it away, to convince herself that it didn't really change anything. She'd probably tell people that the whole thing was a misunderstanding, that she'd always been proud of my little restaurant, that family dynamics were just complicated. She needed something more. Something that would make it impossible for her to rewrite the story, impossible for her to pretend that her treatment of me had been acceptable. And then, as I watched her sitting there in her expensive dress, surrounded by the success she'd never acknowledged, picking at food she'd never thought I was capable of creating, I decided to reveal the final twist. The one thing that would make this evening truly unforgettable. The final twist had been building in my mind all evening, crystallizing into something both beautiful and devastating. As I watched my mother sit in uncomfortable silence, surrounded by the undeniable evidence of my success, I realized what would truly make this moment complete. I walked back into the dining room, and this time I didn't hurry through. I moved slowly, deliberately, making sure everyone could see me approaching. When I reached my mother's chair, I pulled out the empty seat beside her. The 18th chair, the one that should have been mine. You know what, Mom? I said, my voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet room. I think I will join you for dinner after all. I sat down in that chair, like I owned the place. Which, of course, I did. The silence was electric. You could feel the tension crackling around the table as everyone waited to see what would happen next. My mother turned to look at me, and for the first time in my adult life, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not dismissal, not that familiar disappointed resignation. It was something much more complex, shame, mixed with a desperate kind of panic. Elena, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Has there? I asked, keeping my tone conversational, almost curious. Because I'm pretty sure I understood you perfectly when you told me this dinner was for real family only. People who are properly established and successful. I could see her trying to formulate some kind of response, some way to spin this that would make her look less like the villain in this story. But how do you explain excluding your own daughter from Thanksgiving dinner when that daughter turns out to own the restaurant you chose for the celebration? Daniel cleared his throat uncomfortably. Elena, we didn't know. If we'd known this was your place, obviously things would have been different. Would they, though? I asked, genuinely curious about his answer. Because this restaurant has existed for 4 years, Daniel. I've mentioned it in countless conversations. I've invited all of you here dozens of times. The only thing that changed tonight is that you finally realized you couldn't ignore my success anymore. My cousin Maria shifted in her seat. Elena, that's not fair. We didn't know you owned this place specifically. You didn't know because you never listened, I replied. Do you want to know how many times I've tried to tell this family about my restaurant? How many conversations I've started about my work, only to have the subject changed to Daniel's latest case or someone's kid's soccer games? I looked around the table, meeting each of their eyes in turn. I stopped trying to share my victories with you, because you made it clear they didn't matter. And tonight, when Mom made this reservation, she didn't think to invite me because in her mind, I'm still that failure she predicted I'd be when I was 7 years old. My mother found her voice then, though it came out thin and defensive. Elena, you're being dramatic. I never called you a failure. Yes, you did. The words came out steady and sure. I was 7 and I was standing in the hallway listening to you talk to Aunt Carmen on the phone. You said Daniel was bright and focused and going to make something of himself, but you were worried about me because I seemed to lack direction and you thought I was going to be a failure. The color drained from her face. She remembered. I spent the next 23 years trying to prove you wrong. I continued. I worked double shifts to save for culinary school, but you said it wasn't a real career. I built a successful food truck business, but you called it a little cooking project. I opened this restaurant and won awards and got written up in national magazines, but you still introduced me as the daughter who is still figuring things out. The tears in my eyes surprised me. I hadn't planned on crying, hadn't wanted to give her the satisfaction of seeing how much she'd hurt me. But 30 years of pain doesn't just disappear because you finally get your moment of vindication. And tonight, I said, my voice breaking slightly, when you wanted to celebrate with your real family, you chose to do it here, at the place I built, with the food I created, surrounded by the success you've spent my entire life pretending didn't exist. My mother was crying now too, but I couldn't tell if it was from genuine remorse or just embarrassment at being called out in front of everyone. Elena, I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean. Yes, you did mean it, I interrupted. You meant every dismissive comment, every backhanded compliment, every time you made me feel like I wasn't good enough to be part of this family. You meant it when you excluded me tonight, and you meant it every other time you made it clear that my dreams didn't matter to you. I stood up from the table, and for the first time in my life, I felt taller than my mother. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. But here's the thing I've finally learned, I said, looking around at my family, these people who shared my DNA, but had never really known me. I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need you to validate my success or acknowledge my worth. I've built something beautiful here, something I'm proud of, and I did it without any of you. I gestured around the restaurant, at the elegant decor I'd chosen, the artwork from local artists I'd commissioned, the happy customers at other tables enjoying meals I'd created. This is my legacy. These people, my staff, my customers who come here because they love what I've built. They're my real family. They're the ones who believed in me when none of you would. Great Aunt Rosa spoke up then, her voice shaky but determined. Elena, Mija, I always believed in you. I looked at her. This 92-year-old woman who'd flown in from Phoenix for a celebration she thought was important enough to attend despite her age and frailty. Then why didn't you say something when I was excluded? Why didn't anyone say something? The question hung in the air, unanswered, because we all knew the answer. It was easier to go along with my mother's decision than to stand up for what was right. You know what the most ironic part of all this is? I asked, my voice growing stronger. You came here tonight because you wanted to impress each other. You wanted to show off, to prove how sophisticated and successful the Martinez family is. And you chose my restaurant to do it in. You literally could not have celebrated your family's success without including my success, even when you were trying to exclude me. I pulled out my phone and opened up the reservation app, showing the screen to my mother. Rosa Martinez, party of 18, Thanksgiving Day, estimated total $2,847. That's how much you paid to celebrate without me at the restaurant I built. My mother stared at the phone screen like it contained some kind of terrible truth she couldn't escape. And you know what else is ironic? I continued. This dinner you wanted so badly, this perfect family celebration, it would have been so much better if you'd just invited me in the first place. I would have given you the best table, the best service, personally prepared every dish. I would have made this the most magical Thanksgiving our family ever had, because despite everything, I still love you. That's when she really started crying. Not the quiet, dignified tears from before, but deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere primal and broken inside her. Elena, please, she managed between sobs. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand. You didn't want to understand. I corrected gently. There's a difference. I looked around the table one more time, at these faces that had been part of my life for 30 years. Some of them looked ashamed.
Some looked sad.
Some looked angry, though I wasn't sure if that anger was directed at me or at my mother. I hope you enjoy the rest of your dinner, I said finally. The dessert course is a chocolate soufflé with raspberry coulis that took me 3 years to perfect. It's been featured in Bon Appetit twice. I started to walk away, but Daniel called after me. Elena, wait. What happens now? With us, I mean. With the family. I turned back to face him. I don't know, Daniel. That's not really up to me anymore. I've spent 30 years trying to earn a place at this table. Tonight, you're all sitting at mine. What happens next is up to you. And with that, I walked back to my kitchen, leaving them to finish their meal in the world I had created. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I stayed in the kitchen, focusing on the other diners, making sure every table was receiving the excellent service that had made Elena's kitchen's reputation. But part of my attention was always on that private dining room, wondering what conversations were happening behind those closed doors. Around 8 o'clock, Jessica came to find me. Elena, your family is getting ready to leave. They're asking to speak with you. I almost said no. Part of me wanted to let them leave without another word, to end this evening on my terms, with my victory complete. But curiosity got the better of me. I walked to the front of the restaurant, where my family was gathered in an awkward cluster near the door. They looked subdued, exhausted, like they'd all been through something emotionally draining. My mother stepped forward first. Her makeup was smudged from crying, and she looked older than she had that morning. Elena, I don't know how to fix this, she said. I don't know how to undo 30 years of being wrong about you. You can't undo it, I replied simply. But you could try to do better going forward.
How?
Tell me how and I'll do it. I considered her question seriously. You could start by actually seeing me. Not who you want me to be, not who you think I should be, but who I actually am. I'm a successful chef and business owner. I'm good at what I do. I've built something meaningful with my life, and it's different from what Daniel built, but that doesn't make it less valuable. She nodded, tears starting again. You're right. You're absolutely right. And you could stop introducing me as someone who's still figuring things out or treating my career like a hobby. I'm 30 years old, and I own a restaurant that employs 12 people and serves hundreds of customers every week. I'm not figuring anything out anymore. I've figured it out. I understand, she whispered. But understanding and changing are two different things, and we both knew it. Daniel approached me next. Elena, I owe you an apology too. I've been just as dismissive as Mom, just in different ways. I'm sorry. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. An apology was more than I'd expected from any of them. One by one, my family members came forward to say goodbye. Some offered apologies, some just hugged me. Some seemed too overwhelmed to know what to say. Great Aunt Rosa gripped my hands with surprising strength and told me she was proud of me, that she'd always been proud of me. Finally, they were all gone, and I stood in the doorway of my restaurant, watching their cars disappear into the night. Jessica joined me in the doorway. How are you feeling, boss? Honestly, I'm not sure, I admitted. Part of me feels vindicated, like I finally got the recognition I've been craving my whole life. But part of me just feels empty. That's normal, she said. Revenge never feels as good as you think it's going to. Was it revenge, though?
I asked.
Or was it just finally telling the truth? She considered this. Maybe it was both. And maybe that's okay. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Word had gotten out about what happened. Apparently, my cousin Maria had posted about the whole thing on social media, and the story was spreading through our extended family and friend networks like wildfire. Most of the messages were supportive. Friends and distant relatives telling me they'd always known I was talented, that they were proud of what I'd accomplished, that my mother had been wrong to treat me the way she did. But a few were critical. Aunts and uncles telling me I'd embarrass the family, that I should have handled things privately, that humiliating my mother in front of everyone was cruel and unnecessary. Those messages stung, but not as much as I'd expected them to. Because for the first time in my life, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd done the right thing. My mother called around noon. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Elena," she said, and her voice sounded different somehow.
Smaller.
More uncertain. "I've been thinking about last night, about everything you said." "Okay," I replied, not sure where this was going. "You were right. About all of it. I have been dismissive of your success, and I have treated you like you were less important than Daniel, and I did exclude you from Thanksgiving because I didn't think your career was legitimate." I waited for the but that usually followed her admissions of wrongdoing. It didn't come. "I don't know why I did those things," she continued. "Maybe because your path was so different from what I'd planned for you. Maybe because I was scared that if I acknowledged how successful you'd become, I'd have to admit how wrong I'd been about you." "Maybe," I agreed. "I want to try to do better," she said. "I want to learn about your restaurant, about your work, about the life you've built. I want to be proud of you the way I should have been all along." "I'd like that," I said, and I was surprised to realize I meant it. Would you be willing to have lunch with me sometime? At Elena's kitchen? I'd like to experience it properly, as your mother instead of as someone who stumbled in by accident." The request was so humble, so different from the imperious tone she usually took with me, that it caught me off guard. "Yes," I said. "I'd like that too." It's been 6 months since that Thanksgiving dinner, and I can't say that everything with my family has been magically fixed. Relationships that took 30 years to break don't heal overnight. But some things have changed. My mother has eaten at Elena's kitchen 4 times now. She brings friends, she brags about my awards to anyone who will listen, and she actually asks me questions about my work instead of changing the subject. It's not perfect, and there's still awkwardness between us sometimes, but it's progress. Daniel has brought his colleagues from the law firm twice, and he introduces me as my sister, the chef owner, with genuine pride in his voice. Some of my extended family members have become regulars, making reservations for special occasions and bringing out-of-town relatives to experience Elena's place. But more importantly, I've changed. I don't need their approval anymore. Their acknowledgement is nice, their pride is welcome, but my sense of self-worth doesn't depend on it. I know who I am, I know what I've accomplished, and I know that my success is real and valuable regardless of whether my family recognizes it. That's the lesson I want to share with anyone who's listening to this story. You don't need anyone else's permission to be successful. You don't need your family's approval to follow your dreams. You don't need people who've underestimated you to suddenly see your worth for that worth to be real. Sometimes, the people who should be your biggest supporters are the ones who hold you back the most. Sometimes, the family that's supposed to love you unconditionally is the family that puts the most conditions on their love. And when that happens, you have a choice. You can keep trying to earn their approval, keep shrinking yourself to fit their expectations, keep waiting for them to see what everyone else can see. Or you can build your own table. You can create your own definition of success. You can surround yourself with people who appreciate you for who you are, not who they think you should be. That's what I did when I opened Elena's kitchen. I built a place where I belonged, where my talents were valued, where my dreams could flourish. I created a family out of my staff and my customers, people who saw my worth without me having to prove it to them over and over again. The irony is that once I stopped needing my family's approval, once I stopped waiting for them to validate my choices, they finally started to see what I'd been trying to show them all along. But by then, it didn't matter anymore. By then, I already knew who I was. So here's my question for you, and I really want you to think about this. Do you think family loyalty should excuse years of cruelty and dismissal? Is it okay to cut ties with people who consistently make you feel small, even if they share your DNA? Or do we owe it to our families to keep trying, to keep forgiving, to keep hoping they'll change? I'm genuinely curious what you think, because even now, 6 months later, I'm still figuring out the answer to that question myself. What I do know is this: you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, even if those people are family. You are not required to accept crumbs of affection from people who should be giving you full meals of love and support. Your dreams are valid. Your success is real. Your worth is not determined by whether the people who raised you can see it. Build your own table. Create your own celebration. Invite people who truly want to be there. And if the people who excluded you eventually want to join, well, that's up to you to decide. But make sure they're coming to your table as guests, not as judges.